So some of you know what I'm about to say, or are aware of it anyway. Before I came to this church, St. John's, before Cindy and I and our kids were here, we lived in Dallas, and I worked at this big church in Dallas. On a typical Sunday, we would have 8 services. I know, I wanted that. I wanted you to go, ooh. Okay, because that way I know you're with me. So 8 services. And part of the deal of this church, too, is that it had a school attached to it. And it was a pre-K through 6th grade school. And I was there for 4 years. And for a year of the 4, I was a chaplain to the school and worked in the church, too. I did both. And one weekend, the church and the school got together and sponsored a workshop I think it was about parenting. Parenting was becoming a big deal in the 90s back then. And, before, I think people were just like, they're fine. And then we just got kind of into it, right? Like, I'm not going to go there. So at any rate, we're having this workshop, and this nationally known psychologist came. He made his name basically by working with Olympic athletes. And then I'm pretty sure he started some kind of a testing center, a center for adolescents to come and find out who they are, find out where they might go, where they might fit, that kind of thing. So it's been over 25 years, and I can still remember some of the things that he talked about, this guy. So I hadn't heard about ADD, ADHD until then. You heard of that? Back then, it really wasn't as much of a thing, but it's a thing now. And he was the first one that brought that to my attention. And he talked a lot about the high level of depression, anxiety, and stress that teenagers who are a part of high-achieving schools, you know what I mean by high-achieving schools? That those kids that go to those schools were just having a lot of stress that led to depression. And so that was something that stuck with me, because I think we're seeing more and more of that now. But what I remember most is this story I'm about to tell you. So the story is about a high-powered lawyer. This guy was the guy. High-powered, successful. And this guy wanted his daughter, more than anything, he wanted his daughter to go to Duke. So, just to give you a picture of this guy, he never lost a case. He was the guy you wanted if you had to go to court. This was the dude. And he took all of that competitive energy, all of that focus, all of that intensity, and he applied it to everything in his life, including his daughter. Okay, so just full bore. His daughter was a junior in high school, and he thought, man, she is just not doing enough to get into Duke. She's got to pick it up. But no matter how hard he pushed her, she just wouldn't do what he wanted her to do. So he was at his wit's end. I mean, she was getting good grades. She got B's throughout most of her classes, and she got A's in classes like art and music, which gives you a sense of who she was, what she was interested in. But her father, once again, just didn't think she was a good student. She just wasn't great. And to get into Duke, you had to be great. So he went to this psychologist who was leading the workshop. And he said, I want your job is to help me get my daughter into Duke. It's always nice to know what your job is. So get my daughter into Duke. And the psychologist said, well, can't make any promises, but we'll run some tests. We'll meet with her. We'll spend the day and see what we come up with. And then we'll talk about it, okay? So that was the deal. After a full day of testing, the psychologist and the lawyer, the father, went and met in a separate room. And the psychologist said, well, we have thoroughly enjoyed being with your daughter. She's just a delight. She's smart, she's witty, she's creative, and she just has this joy for living. She will do well in college. You don't have to worry about that. But the highly competitive, stress-filled academic environment of a place like Duke, that's probably going to crush her spirit. So, based on our time with her, including asking her her preferences, we believe she needs a smaller, a less competitive environment, and then she'll flourish. She'll just flourish. You know what happened? You do? He fired him. He fired him. He said, well, if you can't get her into Duke, I'll find someone who can. Every time I tell this story, and I told it this morning, and I'm telling it now, and I still have the same reaction. My stomach, I just get this pit in my stomach. It's just, in my mind, what I'm thinking is, what an absolutely awful human being. He's the epitome of what's wrong with the world today. That guy. People who think their way is the only way. People who try to fit others into their own narrow idea of what they should be. What an absolute jerk, that guy. That guy needs Jesus. Well, and especially he needs to hear today's gospel, where Jesus says, in effect, let them be one as we are one. Let them be one as we are one. He really needs to hear that. You see, and so do I. Because I'm doing the same thing to him that he's doing to his daughter. I'm trying to make him be what I think he should be. The truth is, I don't really know anything about the guy. And yet, I've already made him into the problem with the world. He's there he is, the problem with the world, right there. You see, and when I do that, I create an us versus them mentality, an us versus them worldview. You know what that is? So there's us, everybody who agrees with me. That's us. And then there's them, everybody who's wrong. Right? Us versus them. And I can get so stuck in that. And as soon as I'm stuck in that, I lose sight of what the gospel's trying. I really believe this. What this gospel, at least that piece of this gospel, is really trying to show us. Because for me, it's really trying to show us that even though each one of us is a unique individual, and we are that, even though we are a unique individual, we are mysteriously connected to each other. We are interconnected in some mysterious way. We who are many really are one. We're both of those. As so many of you said in your responses, and thank you for your responses to the questions about the sermon or about the gospel. As so many of you responded, being one is not about all being the same. It's not about always agreeing. Being one is about each of us living our own unique lives, using the particular gifts we each have, while remembering that we really are interconnected. We really are parts of a whole in many ways. Simply put, and this is the simplest way I can put it. It might confuse you, but it's very simple for me. So here it is. A part of you is in me. A part of you is in me. A part of me is in you. A part of God is in each of us. And together, we are manifesting God to the world. Together, we are God's self-expression in life, in this world. A part of you is in me. A part of me is in you. A part of God is in each of us. You see, the Father was just totally unable to see this, totally unable to truly see his daughter as something totally different from him in many ways, and yet still interconnected to him. For him, she had to be one way, or she was them. And he was us. You see, what I've learned by doing this whole sermon, preparing for it, is that I'm often unable to see people like this father, people like this lawyer, who is very different from me. I'm often unable to see him as connected to me too. Totally different from me, so connected. You see, being one with each other asks that we stay humble. We stay humble. And we stay open enough to truly see and accept each other. Because I really believe, and I really believe this, when human beings can truly see, care for, and treat each other with respect, I really believe we flourish. And the world benefits. Now, I don't know how this happened, but somehow the psychologist found out why the lawyer was so desperate for his daughter to get into Duke. It turns out that way back in the day when the lawyer was trying to go to college, he had been told that he could be and do and go anywhere he wanted if he just worked hard enough. So he worked and he worked and he worked as hard as he could, but he didn't get into Duke. This was just a huge failure for him. So in his own eyes, he saw himself as a failure. No matter how much he achieved, he could not fill the void not getting into Duke created inside of him. He had this sense of worthlessness that no achievement could fill. And he didn't want his daughter to feel the same thing. You see, because he told her she could do and be anything she wanted if she just worked hard enough. And he was hoping that if she got into Duke, she wouldn't have experienced what he experienced, that pain. I have to say, I still really hope that this father will accept his daughter for the person she is, as different as she is from him. I really hope that. But when I hear this part of the story, I see more than the embodiment of all the world's problems. I see someone a lot like me, a dad trying to love his daughter the best he knows how. I see someone a lot like me, while he is still very different from me. We who are many, we're one. Amen.